Theresa Regan.
I'm here.
There you go. Thanks for doing this chat with me.
Thanks for having me on.
I'll let you introduce yourself to everybody.
Okay. My name is Theresa Regan. I've been a freelance commercial photographer for the last 10 years, based in Philly, sometimes make it up to New York, but mostly like headshots, product photography, things like that.
Okay. And we've known each other. I've been doing photography for 10 years. How long have you been doing photography?
10 years. Actually, it'll be 11 years this month.
Okay, so we're like kind of the same pace.
Same
And
timeline.
we never personally sat down and talked, but it was kind of always, bumping into you at events around the city. And you was always just a nice person and always said hi, always remembered my face, always remembered your face. And we never really sat down. So this is actually our first time sitting down. So give me just like the short version of your origin story. Like, did you grow up in an area? Where did you go to high school? Did you go to school for photography, or are you self-taught?
So I grew up right outside of Northeast Philly, like in the Rockledge area. I went to high school at St. Basil's, no longer there anymore, but that's where I picked up my first camera. I was like classically trained in art for years and years, but I hated the art teacher at my high school. So I transitioned from art to the camera. So taught myself. I had saved up all my money, bought this like a little Olympus. That's what people I followed on like Tumblr were using. So I was like, I'll get that. Taught myself, went to school at Temple for photojournalism, knowing that I wasn't going to go the journalism route. It was just like, I think more of a comfort for my parents to know that I was not just going for photography.
Okay.
So I was like, I can write too. Let me go for journalism. So went to Temple. I got out of school and took kind of like a year where I didn't work in photo, but then after that year went full-time freelance. So, and my first job was as a manager at a photo studio, and that kind of like set me up for the future. I met so many photographers that way, was working with all of them, like assisting or just being on set, helping them out. So that kind of got my foot in the door, because then they started sending me leads. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
At this photo studio, did you start to assist other photographers, or did you stop working there and say, I'm going to go hang my own shingle and become a professional photographer?
It was kind of a mix of the two. So I knew I wanted to be in the photo field. So I got this job managing the studio. So I would come in and like mop the floors, clean the bathrooms, and like collect everyone's rent. But meeting all the photographers that worked there was like 10 different photographers that were in the studio too, because it was like a co-working space / shooting space. They started hiring me as an assistant. So that's kind of how I learned how to use lighting and all the different equipment and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, like working with clients too, because I had not had clients of my own. And then once those photographers, there was like Nell Hoving, Colin Linton, Steve Boyle, those guys.
Oh yeah, those are some like
yeah.
some names, like some
they're all
names.
Yeah, they're all great. Nell's still one of my best friends to this day. But they kind of took me under their wing, and then like I was able to see kind of how everything worked. So
I think that's great. And
yeah.
How old were you?
23 at the time. Yeah.
Okay, so I started photography at 28. It was a career change, but I think being that young and having the time, just to, be in the studio all day and pick up from those photographers who are at a different space than you was very, very, very great.
Yeah. I was just sometimes going into the studio just to like sit at my desk and just watch them work and be like, okay, what are they doing over there? How do they set those lights up? Like, how do they interact with their client? So it was a really good like learning experience.
And so now, what does your work consist of?
So mostly I do a lot of like branding stuff, headshots, and product photography, and then a lot of events too. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I feel like I do pretty much the whole scope of like marketing stuff and like family, babies, that kind of stuff. So, and I do a few weddings here and there too as a second shooter for another photographer.
And how did you land in the commercial space? Because, you could have went to family portraits and events and things like that. What made you say like, I want to more so work with brands and businesses?
Right. I think it was being in the atmosphere that I was in at that first studio. It's because all the photographers that worked there, they were all commercial photographers at the time. So that's kind of what I was put into from the very beginning, and kind of what I had more, I like having a little bit more creativity and working, with brands and stuff like that. So like I kind of had the idea that I wanted to go that direction. But I think seeing everyone that was working at that studio doing that type of work, it was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things about commercial photography, what I'm learning, is pricing. So how did you learn about like pricing? Are you at the point where you're charging usage now, or are you still just kind of doing like an all-in price and not really breaking out usage?
It depends on the client, honestly. Okay. Like I have started dabbling with a little bit of usage, but it's so hard. I feel like that's the hardest thing about our job is
Commercial
pricing.
Yeah.
So that's like something I'm still learning all the time. But I think just being like transparent with other people in the industry and being like, hey, what would you like if a different client comes in that I haven't worked with and they have these like, oh, can we do this, or this? I'll go to one of my like trusted colleagues and be like, what would you charge for something like this? Like what's, just so I'm not underselling myself or overselling myself, you know what I mean? And I feel like that's been such a learning process. But yeah, usually I'm kind of more of a blanket, like I do like the day rate and that will include usage, but I think I've tried to like start working that into certain clients. So
are you breaking out retouching? Or is retouching kind of included in that?
Yeah, usually included.
So you include like a certain amount of images?
Yeah, so actually that depends too. I feel like it's always usually client by client basis and what they want. So if I'm shooting like product stuff, if I'm doing things like on Seamless, I'll charge per retouched image, so that if they're choosing 10 images, it's one price. If they're choosing 20, it's another price, because that includes like the retouching. So I will break it into stuff like that, especially for product things. But for something that's like branding shoot, and a lot of it's lifestyle and environmental, that I won't really even do much retouching on that. It'll just be like kind of like Lightroom edits, and then they get all the good stuff. I don't really like cap the number of images. So again, that really just depends on the client.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we were just talking about this before we got on camera. Like, it seems like you're always working and you're just great with sharing and posting on social media.
Yeah.
And I think that's great because clients see that you're busy. You always have something to share. How are you marketing to clients? Are you doing spec work for the prospective clients you want to get, or do you just kind of take what comes to you?
I've been honestly so lucky that all my stuff has been word of mouth or like referrals from other people, or people being like seeing that I'm posting all the time and being like, oh, I have a friend who, her company, they need headshots, or I have a friend who they're launching a new product or whatever. So a lot of it has been word of mouth or referrals, stuff like that. So I haven't done much like actual like outside advertising for my business, and part of that comes with just I'm always so busy, so like I don't think about it.
Are you doing spec work at all for yourself? Like, are you any test shoots, or are you like, hey, I'm trying to get jewelry clients, let me buy some jewelry, photograph it for marketing images, or what do you do? Yeah,
I do definitely do that stuff. There's a couple models and makeup artists that I've worked with like pretty consistently just with test shoots. We'll set up like 2 or 3 over a year, where we'll bring in a couple models and just do like a full day of just like maybe 3 or 4 models in a day, just to like build both of our books and the models as well. So like we all get the images to use, we can collab on posts and whatnot. So I've definitely done a lot of that. Sometimes I'll come into my studio when I have like a day off, and I'll have like a bunch of products that I get from like my FabFitFun box or whatever it is.
Okay.
FabFitFun, sponsor this podcast. And I'll come in and just play around with stuff and have those for like, my portfolio as well. So yeah, I definitely do that kind of stuff.
And what type of challenges are you coming across now in your business at this point in your career?
I would say more so like not, my biggest challenge I think is like landing clients that like more like right now more product clients, because I want to get back into the product space, and I feel like I've kind of gotten away from that because a lot of it is like the more like commercial advertising and things like that, and like headshots. And I was doing a lot more product before. It just kind of, I feel like the type of work that I do kind of ebbs and flows. You know,
Yeah.
I'm sure you know this too.
Yeah,
It's
one year you'll be shooting
Yeah.
products, next year you'll be shooting on figure, next year you'll be doing all corporate. So
exactly.
it's like, yeah, it always
It's like
changes.
every year has a different theme to it. I feel like this year was a lot of like headshots, which is great. I mean,
And so you want to get more product work?
Yeah, I think that's like where I always like find myself wanting to be the space, wanting to be in more. So
Okay.
yeah, but again, I'm not doing any kind of like marketing for my own business, so
Yeah, so that's
doing
a
that.
good, that's a good, I guess, segue to say like that's when you get in here, you shoot some products, and
Yeah.
you send those images out in emailers or marketing materials and things like that. And
Yeah.
you have studio space. Like, what kind of went into your decision of saying like, now it's time for me to have this space? Because I feel like every photographer goes through that, where they're sharing studios, they're renting studios per job. Some people are working out of their house. What factors went into you deciding I need a space outside of my house or not with anybody else, all to myself?
So over the years, I've always kind of had studio spaces that I could use, other photographer spaces. Again, when I was first starting, I was the manager at a studio, and they would let me have one shoot day a month as like part of my like pay there or whatever. And then so I was able to use that studio. When we left there, my friend Nell Hoving, she had her own studio for a number of years, and she would always let me shoot out of that studio. And then she actually built a studio in her own home, so left her studio space. So there was like 2 years that I kind of like didn't have a home to shoot in, which was fine. I mean, it worked. Like people would be like, "Oh, do you have a space I could come for whatever shoot?" And I would always kind of just be like, "Oh, I can come to you if it's easier."
Yeah.
And it always kind of worked. But I knew I always wanted to have that option of people being able to come to me, because it's just easier than me coming to their house, setting up in their space. I've always, I never want to feel intrusive coming to someone's house, whatever, or business. I've had like jewelry clients where I'm like set up like in their like break room,
Yeah,
and like
that
their
happens a lot,
employees are like trying to get around me. So, I knew I just wanted like a space of my own, and my studio's in East Falls. I live right around the corner, and a space, I was just kind of like perusing the area, and I saw the space had opened up in Sherman Mills, and it was kind of the perfect size. I do a lot of smaller scale shoots, especially with product stuff. So like envisioning having a lot more of that in here.
Yeah, work.
And I was just kind of like talking to my mom about it, and she's like, my biggest cheerleader. So she was like, you know what, like give it a year. If after a year it's not worth it,
If it's not
then
paying
you
for
just
itself or something like that. Yeah.
So it's been almost a year, and it's been worth it. So I'm like, all right, guess I'll stay here for a little while. Yeah, I kind of always knew I wanted my own space at some point.
I want to get there someday, but
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know. I'm bad with just spreadsheets and putting math on it. Like, and I'm just like, if I spend $3,000, $2,000, whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, you can offset that with having
Yeah.
studio mates. I'm like, for me right now, I want to do more on location and
Yeah.
more travel work. So I've had studios in the past. I feel like that monthly money, I would like to try, save it up,
Yeah.
do something on location, travel somewhere. But
Definitely. Yeah.
that's not happening.
Yeah.
I still, I'm still not doing it. So
Yeah.
you got to, at some point, you got to make a decision and do something.
Yes.
And the rest will figure itself out.
Yeah.
Are you a part of any like trade organizations like ASMP or the PPA or anything like that?
No, I actually used to be on the board of ASMP for a little bit. I don't really know how that happened.
ASMP Philly?
Yes.
Yeah. Before the chapter closed down,
Did they close down?
the chapter in Philly closed down, but the one in New York is still open. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
So
It was after I left. They were like, we need to close the chapter. No, I used to be part of ASMP. I'm not anymore, but I was on the board of the Philly I was like 24 years old. I don't know how I got. They were like one of my friends, actually a couple of my friends. It was like Steve Boyle, I think Colin Linton, Matt Godfrey. They were all on the board. Matt Stanley maybe even too. So it was all the guys I worked with at the studio, and they were like, "Do you want to be part of this?" And I was like, "Sure." At that point, I was doing everything I could. I was like,
that's great.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, that's great.
And I don't know, we would just like plan a couple of events, and we would have them at the studio that everyone worked at, that I was the manager at. And but yeah, that was years and years ago. But no, I'm not, right now I'm not part of any like the networking groups. I know there's like ILEA, they have like a pretty good networking group.
What's that?
I don't remember what it stands for, but it's like a lot of industry people. So it's not just photography, it's like a lot of like the events industry. So there's like,
yeah, I'll have to get that from you.
Yeah.
Are you a big gear person?
I am not. I mean, I have all the gear, and like I know how to use it, but we were talking about this little off camera. I am like so not a techie person. Like I know so many people are like so interested in like the, you know, all the different numbers and how like everything affects everything and all the specs and stuff like that. I know how to use my gear and I know how to make everything look good, but I'm like more so just like fly by the seat of my pants. I'm like, I know how to.
But you use strobe. So when I ask, are you a gear person?
Yeah.
There are some photographers who like, no, I only shoot natural light. And then other photographers are, I shoot natural light, I use strobe, I'm capable of using whatever tool.
Yes, gotcha. Yeah, so I do use the gear when I work. So I try to keep, when I'm like on location for stuff, especially with branding work, I work with a lot of smaller businesses, so I don't want to overwhelm them with like 10 different lights and all like the modifiers and stuff. So a lot of times I try to keep it pretty simple. So most times I'm usually working with one strobe. I do like to bring in that artificial light though, just have a little more control, fill in a little bit of stuff, make it, you know, it gives it that like crispiness to it. Yeah. So I personally do like using strobes when I work. So I've done plenty of stuff in natural light too. I'm never gonna knock natural light. I use it a lot, but I like to supplement the natural light with a strobe or two. Yeah. So, and then when I'm in studio, I'm using like the full like six strobes and whatnot.
Six
so,
strobes?
Yeah, you know,
Wow.
when you gotta really impress. Usually I'll keep it to 2 or 3 if I can get away with it. But yeah. I like to keep my sets pretty minimal. Again, I feel like you can do so much with so little. And I've known the guys that have been like, oh yeah, I'll set up 10 lights. 5 of them aren't even firing. They're just for the look. And I'm like, I don't want to bring in 10 lights. That's the thing. Like, I don't want to set up all that equipment. So I'm going to keep it to 3 and get the same kind of look.
What does your typical shoot team look like? Do you have assistants?
I generally just work on my own. I'm
Really?
usually,
So you're still lugging your own bags?
I sure am. I have a little cart with a little rock and roller.
That's crazy.
Sponsor this rock and roller. Load it up. I'm usually, bungee cords are my best friend. I'll bungee everything. You know, you have the cart now.
Oh, I bought the production cart, but I mean, I think I'm now all about assistance. I mean, I've reached out to, you know, just local universities and things like that. You can get a college student for a couple $100 that will really benefit from learning from you. And you can save your back a little bit.
I know. Yeah. I definitely have used like the college kids. I've had people reach out and be like, "Can I just come and shadow you?" And I'm like, "If I can get you paid, I'll get you paid for sure." But a lot of my smaller shoots, I just roll on my own. So, but I will bring on extra hands when I can. But I feel like a lot of times it's just me, myself, and I.
Throughout your career, what has been like a shoot that really stood out to you or was monumental in your career? Like, what was your favorite, largest, your first big money job, your first, you know, commercial client? Like, what stood out?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like it all kind of blends together. I feel like the first like big client that I was like, oh, this is a big name, was like QVC. And I know that so many people that are in this industry in the area, everyone's worked with QVC.
I've never worked with QVC.
No? I feel like most people, it's like one of the ones that's like, to photographers in the area, it's like not even that impressive because it's like, oh yeah, we've all worked for them. But you know what I mean? It was like, Ooh, I get to say I worked for QVC, so I feel like that was like
it's
a
still
big
a great
one.
name, yeah.
Yeah,
Were
yeah.
you shooting on model or product for them?
Them I've done more. I used to do some like behind the scenes stuff for them, and then I've done some like portrait work for them. Not so much like their e-commerce like product stuff, like on model, but I've done like they've had like execs come and have their portrait taken, or I've done like their sets like behind the scene, like as like a show's going on. So more kind of like run and gun stuff.
Okay, nice.
But yeah, they were like I feel like that was like a big one when I got that job. Them and recently I've started working with Terrain. I know you've worked with Terrain, right?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
freelanced at Terrain, Anthro.
Yeah.
I never worked at Urban in particular, but Terrain and Anthro I
Yeah,
freelanced at.
Terrain is like my first in that family of the urban, umbrella. But they were like more recently an exciting one where I was like, oh, finally.
You're shooting product?
Yeah, some more like lifestyle stuff. So I'll do like event stuff for them, and then they'll stage. Like the last one I had for them was a couple weeks ago, and they staged this influencer's whole like barn. She had like they decked it out to the nines for Christmas, and then I go in and like was doing all like the little details. So a lot of that's like for their like design team.
Okay.
But they've been like that was like an exciting one more recently that I'm like, ooh,
good.
I've always wanted to work with Terrain.
We're coming up on the end of 2024. What are some of your goals for 2025? Where are you trying to see your career go?
Also a great question. I feel like we just started 2024, so
All right, it's already over.
it's crazy that we're here. But definitely to do more product stuff. Like I said, I want to get back into that scope of work. But really just like, I feel like just keep building my brand and do like more, utilize the studio space more, work with more models, more like even just like tabletop product stuff. So things like that that can be more like, I don't know, kind of get creative with stuff. But definitely start to do more of that stuff. And I know start marketing myself a little bit more too. Yeah, maybe some sponsored ads here and there.
And do some video too, right?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
What advice do you have for photographers just starting out? Maybe like 3 things.
3 things. Well, my first I definitely would say is to like, when you're first coming out of college, like don't assume that you know everything. I feel like I see that with a lot of people that are like fresh out of school. They're like, I know exactly what I'm doing. Like they kind of, I don't know if you've experienced this, they'll kind of come on set and be like, oh yeah, like we just learned this and you should do it this way. And it's like,
yeah,
like you're just beginning your learning journey. Like I'm still learning every single time I'm out there shooting. I learned something new about myself, my gear, like whatever it is. So I would say like, don't assume that you know everything just because you're fresh out of school with that stuff. Don't be afraid to like value your work, because I think that was something that I had a hard time with as coming out of school, where it was like, I felt like I needed to do everything for free, which I guess would kind of go with my third point would be like, you can also do the stuff for free too. Like if it's gonna build your book, like just try it. And if you don't like it, then you won't want to do that kind of stuff. Like I was doing, like I would do family stuff and babies in the beginning, learn very quickly it's not what I want to do.
Yeah, that's the only way you can learn.
Exactly. So try your hand in a lot of different things, but also make sure you're valuing your work. Like I would say, don't like say no to too much, but there's like a fine line, but like make sure you're also getting respected for your work.
That's great advice.
Yeah. And also I think as a bonus, find someone that you kind of look up to in the industry and just like pester them with questions. Ask questions. That's how you learn. Like find a mentor, someone that can like, you can come with and be like, come to and be like, how would you set up for something like this? What kind of gear would you use for something like, how would I like this? Or what should I charge this client or something like that? Someone that you feel comfortable asking questions to.
What inspires you? Like, how do you get inspired? Like for me, I deal in like beauty on figure portraiture. So I can see a beautiful person or somebody dressed well. And I'm like, man, I want to get out and shoot a story or photograph jeans with a similar cut. Like, what inspires you to create images?
I think just like kind of seeing what other people are doing in the space and not that I'm ever gonna like copy what someone else is doing, but being like, whoa, that was a really cool idea. Like, how can I kind of like manipulate that or figure something out similarly? Like, even just with like learning more about like retouching and all that stuff. Like when I was starting out with that stuff, just to like be like, here's this cool thing. Like, let me try to like do something similar. I think it's just like seeing like other cool stuff people are doing. And also just like, I think for, especially along product lines, like cool packaging. And I see something and it's like, I'm such a sucker for packaging. If I see, like, if I get a product and I'm like, I'm going to save this because I want to do something with this, and like trying to find like cool props and colors and stuff to go with it. So
It's funny because I don't pay attention to packaging that much, but now I'm thinking and I'm like, okay, I think what stands out to me is I'll get something and the imagery is bad. But I think good packaging just kind of flies by me and I don't realize it, but bad packaging, I've noticed. So
100%.
that's a good call out.
Yeah. I think seeing stuff that's like well done, I'm like, oh, I need that. And then now I've kind of transitioned that into, I can buy that and shoot it, and then it becomes work, and then I can use the product.
Okay.
Yeah.
What type of products do you prefer? Are you like beauty products, splashes, liquids? Are you food? What type of products do you like?
Mostly in the past, I've done like beauty stuff, which I love doing, and jewelry, which I also love doing. So I had a couple jewelry clients. One of them has since gone in-house with their photographer who does amazing work, so I can't be mad at that. But like, I was in there once a month for like over a year just playing with their jewelry, and it was so much fun. So I have a couple different jewelry clients that I love. So that stuff is, playing with diamonds is just like the greatest. Everything like super macro, and like you're going in and like painting in little prisms and stuff. It's just fun. I love that stuff. So yeah.
All right, well, thanks for inviting me to your studio and sharing all this information.
Yeah, thanks for coming by. This is
Good chatting with
great.
you.
Yeah.